Good morning, everyone. This is Rabbi Jenni Greenspan from Congregation Beth-El Zedek. I say good morning and shalom. I see I've got Jim Roth with me so far. We're going to do our Judaism to go this week. This week, just as a taste, I will be talking a little bit about how I like to reinterpret our prayers a little bit based on one of my favorite passages in the Talmud. And I'm actually going to put a link to a source sheet that I created into our comments here. So if you'd like to follow along with me, you'll follow the link that I just put into the chat, into the comments thread. We're not on Zoom, we're on Facebook, so it's a comment thread, not a chat, but I'm putting the link to that source sheet right there. If you want to follow that, you can take a look at the passage that I will be using today, but you don't have to. I will read through all of it and explain it through as we go. So if you would like to look at it, it is in the pinned comment, and you'll see the link there, and if not, that's okay. I'll give us a couple minutes, see if any others want to join our learning this morning, and then we will get going with our Judaism to go for our Wednesday morning. And I'm now seeing a warning that there's trouble with my video. If you can still see me and hear me, could someone just comment and just tell me that I am still live, that you can still see me? If not, I will log off and come back on in a moment. Am I still here? Go ahead and just comment if you see me. I am here. Okay. All right, so for whatever reason, I'm not getting a picture for myself anymore, but if you can still see and hear me, then that's good. I can get going. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Judaism to go for this week. Thank you all. I see that you can see and hear me, so that is fine. That is going to be just good. We will work with it. So if you look in the pinned comments, as I mentioned before, there is a sheet. If you want to follow along on the sources that I'm going to look at, you don't have to, but if you'd like to, just follow that link and you can set it up in an extra window next to me and we'll go through it together. I thought I would talk this morning a little bit about a prayer journey that I have had and a way that a specific passage in the Talmud helped me make a better sense of one of the blessings that we say. In theory, if we have a prayer practice of every single morning, we'd say it every morning, but in our community, we definitely at least say it to start every Shabbat morning service. And that is that series of the morning blessings. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamechin mitzadei gaver is an example of one of them that we'll get to in a little bit. But one at the very beginning is Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, malbish arumim. When we say, "Blessed are you, Adonai our God, ruler of the world, who clothes the naked." And I have to admit, at some point I was reading through these blessings when I was much younger and realized that I have never seen God actively clothe the naked and take care of us. And I could interpret the blessing to say that I am grateful that I am in a position to always have enough clothing to wear, enough food to eat, enough money to keep a roof over my head. But it seemed odd to be blessing God for doing that when it wasn't necessarily God doing that for everyone. That I was blessed to have those resources, but I know that not everyone does. And this blessing is not, blessed is God who clothes me, but who clothes the naked, who clothes everyone. So that bothered me for a while until one of my teachers brought me this particular passage from Talmud. If you were to go into the Talmud being a collection of arguments about our oral law, arguments about our sharing stories, arguments about what the various verses of the Torah means, a corpus of legend and literature, as I like to think of it, that was developed by some of our earliest rabbis in the 2nd to 4th centuries. The Talmud is a very vast work of literature with many, many voices. And this particular one comes from the Masechet Sota. It's a section that's dealing with, actually, it's a section dealing with adultery, but it is not, in fact, what this particular passage is about. If you were to try to read pieces of the Talmud, you would see that there are lots and lots of tangents. And so there's this particular little gem in that Masechet on page 14a of Masechet Sota, of the tractate Sota, where Rabbi Chana, son of Hanina, says to someone, "What is the meaning of this verse that we see in Deuteronomy, that after Adonai your God you should walk?" Seems like a straightforward question. You're supposed to follow God, but how would we do that? How should we walk after God when God does not have a physical form in our world? Rabbi Chama, son of Rabbi Hanina, says, is it really possible for a person to follow the divine presence? So he says, rather, the meaning for us as people is that we should follow the attributes of the Holy Blessed One. We should follow God's behaviors. And then Rabbi Chama ben Hanina cites 4 different times in our Torah where we see God working for a person, intervening to do something for a person. And then Rabbi Chama bar Hanina says that we need to do that too. So for example, here's my blessing. Just as God clothed the naked, as it was written way back at the beginning of Genesis, God made for Adam and for his wife garments of skin and clothed them. After Adam and Eve eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, God gives them clothes. And so too, you must clothe the naked. We learn from this that so too, when we have the moment of blessing and saying, how great is it and how grateful am I that I have enough to eat and enough to wear and shelter, the reminder from the Torah and the reminder in our blessing is that we should do that for others as well and follow God's attribute from the creation story. And just as God visits the sick, as it's written, this is you'll see in the translation there if you look, this is right after Abraham experiences his circumcision. God visits him with regard to God's appearing to Abraham following his circumcision, and the Lord, or God, appeared unto Abraham, who's the him here, by the terebinths of Mamre. So Abraham is sitting and healing, and God comes to him and comes to be available and to be a comfort to him. And so too, you must clothe the sick. Obviously, right now, that is not the easiest thing for us to do in person, but still, even as we are all in our own separate spaces, we also know how deeply and truly connected that we are able to still reach out and to speak to one another. And even now, Bikur Cholim, the mitzvah of visiting the sick, is vitally important, that we can reach out, we can give a phone call, we can send a card or a letter in the mail, we can come on Zoom or on FaceTime, and we can just make sure that everyone is doing okay and that we don't forget those who are not only isolating at home but are actually sick, that we make sure that we are there for them. And I do mean sickness both in body and in spirit. We can be there for one another just as God was there for Abraham while he was healing. And another example, just as the Holy Blessed One consoles mourners, as it's written, came to pass after the death of Abraham that God blessed Isaac his son. And Rashi, our famous medieval French commentator, interprets this to mean this blessing was that God was there while Isaac was burying his father. And this is a reminder to us not only to console mourners and to be present even if it is a Zoom Shiva, to be present when people are dealing with loss, and to also be present whenever anyone is going through any kind of hard time, just as God was there for Isaac in our Torah. Our final example from Rabbi Chana bar Rabbi Chanina, just as the holy blessing one buried the dead, as it is written, he was buried in the valley of the land of Moab. So too you must bury the dead. And this is God burying Moses at the very, very end of our Torah. And it is a reminder to us that one of the greatest acts of love, of chesed, of loving kindness or love in action, is to do for another what they cannot do for themselves, is to make sure that they are cared for in their death and that they are buried appropriately. And then that is another thing that's a little bit more difficult right now, and we are all working together to make sure that everybody is still cared for with dignity. But the overall theme of this passage of Talmud, as you can see, is God did this, so too must you. And all of these are examples of God taking care of another person, of a person, that we can take care of one another. And so that brings me back to those morning blessings. I said I'd struggled as a younger person with the Malbish Arumim, with clothing the naked, when it does not appear that God just does that. Instead, here's the blessing that I think when we are saying it, our morning blessings, this is the one that perhaps God is still doing. This is the one that God uses to get us to do that previous one of Malbish Arumim. This is Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamechin mitzadei gaver. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the world, who steadies or even sets, prepares the steps of a man or of any person. That God's intervention right now is through us. That God prepares us, prepares our steps each morning, gives us our moments of gratitude for ourselves, and then reminds us to go on our way to take care of one another. To clothe and to feed those who need it, to be there for those who are sick in body or in spirit, and to just take care of one another in our hardest times and our best times. I hope this is a useful reinterpretation of our morning blessings, one that we can take to heart right now. And I encourage you to take a look. If you are on our source sheet, if you click through one of those blessings, the little line just above it, you'd actually get the whole set of those morning blessings if you wanted to take a look at all of them and see how you today can be the steps of God and be the hands of God. This passage of Talmud reminds us that our Torah is not necessarily meant to be the prescription, but rather the reminder of how we work with God and how we can use God's example to be our own strength and our own community for one another. Say good morning. I hope that you have a wonderful day of steady, guided steps for yourself, and that you are loved and cared for, and that you can pass on the love and the care to another. We'll see you for our various Shabbat activities. We're going to have our Friday evening. We will have our Shabbat gathering at 6 o'clock. And on Saturday morning, Torah Talk this week will be at 9 o'clock rather than 10, so that we can have our very first Zoom Bat Mitzvah at 10 o'clock. So we'll have those links will be available for that Zoom Bat Mitzvah for our Saturday morning services. It'll be a little bit different this morning, but we are very excited to celebrate with the Bat Mitzvah and her family. And I will see you at 9 a.m. for Torah Talk, but first I'll see you at 6 p.m. on Friday for our Shabbat gathering and our candle lighting. I will see you soon. Thank you.